Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports. And in today's video, we're taking another look at the AP Top 25 poll just released today. And it was a crazy week 12 in college football, a lot to break down. And we're actually going to start this video instead of at number 25 with the others receiving votes category, because I think it's pretty interesting here that we see Clemson with 101 total votes, see very close to being actually ranked 25th in the nation, 105 here for Arkansas. 101 here for Clemson. So they were very close to breaking back into the top 25. Dabo Swinney's team is back up to 8-3. They actually have a better record than Arkansas here, who did lose a close game against the Alabama Crimson Tide this week. Clemson blew out Wake Forest. So it was an interesting weekend slate of games there because Clemson does beat a ranked opponent. Arkansas loses to a top 5 ranked opponent, and they choose to keep Arkansas slightly above Clemson. And for Arkansas, Traylon Burks was phenomenal in that game. Made some plays after the catch, stretched the ball down the field. He's going to be an elite wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's got a lot of those traits you're looking for in a true number one guy. He's got size, ability to make plays happen after the catch, really good route runner, and you can get him the ball in a variety of ways. He's going to be a very nice piece, and he's the best player in Arkansas, and it showed against the Crimson Tide. Despite their loss, they dropped down to 25. Then we got NC State, the Raging Cajuns, San Diego State, and Wake Forest here. I talked about Wake Forest. Earlier in the year, they found themselves ranked 10th highest in their program history. They've dropped down now to 21 after 2 losses in the last 3 weeks. They've just had some struggle points this year, especially after getting ranked as high as they were. They've seen them kind of take a step back, fall down a little bit in the standings. Raging Cajuns have been consistent all year long. They're at 10-1. Aztecs as well at 10-1, representing the Mountain West and Sun Belt. I love seeing these smaller conferences represented. And I know there's a lot of, distaste on the channel for some of these smaller conference teams because you're looking and saying, well, is that team actually better than a team like Arkansas, who's, got a really tough schedule in the SEC, or even Clemson, who in the ACC, it's not an easy road by any means in the ACC. Moving into the top 20 here, we're looking at 20 Pittsburgh Panthers here, the Houston Cougars at 19, the Wisconsin Badgers at 18, Iowa and Utah round out 20-16. Let's start here with some of the Big Ten teams. Wisconsin and Iowa, Big Ten, one of the best conferences in all of college football. I think this year they've been the second best conference, right behind the SEC. The SEC usually right at the top there every single year. And also the American Athletic Conference, slightly better this year. They got 2 teams in the top 25. I think overall the strength of that conference is growing. In some ways, the Cougars have had a really good year. Pittsburgh Panthers, led by Kenny Pickett, have been playing pretty good football as well. We see them at 20. That's exactly where they were last week, so they stay right in the spot they were last week. Iowa, a team that had a ton of expectations. Earlier in the year, we're number 2 in the nation. My co-creator on the channel, Austin, thought that was not a well-deserved ranking. We see them down now at 17. I think that's kind of closer to where he had expected them to be. And then Utah here, really the team to talk about in the 20-16 range. At 16, they came in last week ranked 24th and absolutely gave it to the Oregon Ducks. They won that game mightily. I believe the final score of that game, if I can recall here, let's see if I can find it really quickly. I think it was 38-3 or 38-7, excuse me. So yeah, the Utah Utes just destroyed the Oregon Ducks in a Pac-12 matchup, which brings us here into the top 15. 15-11 here we have UTSA, Texas A&M, Brigham Young, Michigan State, and Oregon. And again, this is a really interesting grouping here because UTSA at 11-0 for Conference USA stays right at that 15 ranking, barely beat UAB this week. And that would have been a loss that would have pulled UTSA completely out of every single rankings, both the AP Top 25 and the FBS College Football Playoff rankings. UTSA, I'm happy that they won. I'm happy to see them at 11-0, but I understand why they did not move up. In fact, I'm kind of surprised that they're not below Utah at this point, just because Utah beat Oregon, who's a better team for sure than UAB. Then we're looking at Texas A&M here, the Aggies, up and down this year. And I think this is a good team to kind of point out maybe some of the weakness this year in college football, where there's not a team or a collection of teams, rather, that are so much better than every other team, because A&M, 3 losses this year to still be in the top 15. Very interesting. Then we got BYU 9-2, Michigan State 9-2, and Oregon 9-2. These two at the top here, 11 and 12, are the ones we have to circle. The Oregon Ducks, like I said, got absolutely demolished by the Utah Utes. Just could not run the football and could not slow down Utah running the football. The running back Tavion Thomas, I believe it is, had an absolutely insane day against the Oregon Ducks. 3 touchdowns there. Just great performance. And Michigan State got obliterated by the Ohio State Buckeyes. Michigan State gave up 49 first half points. We're down 49-0. Ended up losing 56-7. So they did play even in the second half when Ohio State kind of moves to some of their backups. Of course, the backup to CJ Stroud threw a few passes that game. But CJ Stroud really kind of set himself apart in the Heisman race for me. Michigan State, I thought Kenneth Walker was going to be the guy who could maybe even win it at that running back position. Only put up 24 yards on the ground yesterday for the Michigan State Spartans against the Ohio State Buckeyes, and CJ Stroud threw 6 first half touchdowns, threw over 430 passing yards. And I think that's a real big statement game for both Ohio State and CJ Stroud, and it really separates them in the Big Ten, which is the big key area. Looking then here to the next part, we got Oklahoma back into the top 10 for the Big 12, followed by Baylor, Ole Miss in here for the SEC, Oklahoma State, another Big 12 team, and then Michigan, another Big 10 team here. So we have 3 Big 12 teams from 10 to 6. Oklahoma State, led by their running back duo, Jalen Warren specifically, has been great all season long. They've got 2 running backs there who can make a lot of plays. I believe the 2 of them combined for 5 touchdowns on the ground this past week. So they are rolling there. Specifically on the ground, Oklahoma State's really shifted in the last decade from a passing offense to a run-first offense, and I think that's a key reason why we see them ranked 7th here. Ole Miss, led by Matt Corral, a team that really likes to air the football out. Matt Corral, very, very smart with the football, does not turn it over. I believe only has 2 interceptions on the year. They find themselves ranked 8th after 2 teams in the top 10 drop out in Oregon and Michigan State. Oklahoma, another team. You see the trend here. A lot of these teams slide up 2 spots because of who lost. It's more so who ahead of them fell out of the top 10 rather than what these teams did to really jump up, at least this week for the rankings. But still notable that these 5 teams here are in that 10 to 6 range. Michigan over Michigan State now, despite losing to Michigan State earlier, of course, have only the 1 loss on the year. The Wolverines have been very good this year. Quarterback play has been consistent. They've got a good defense. Harbaugh knows what he's doing there with that team. The Wolverines find themselves ranked 6th, which leads us into the top 5 here. Notre Dame, a team that we've talked a lot about on the channel. We've seen them around 14 quite a bit this year. Notre Dame, I think, kind of shows how weak college football is as well this year. Historically, I don't think this is a team that's good enough to be ranked 5th in the nation this late into the season. I just would not see that. Of course, they have Kyle Hamilton, who's an absolute beast at that safety spot, but overall, their whole team, I just don't think that they're a traditional number 5 ranked team in the nation, which kind of goes to show how maybe balanced this year is, or maybe the lack of true elite top talent across the teams. Of course, there is one team that has its head and shoulders above the rest here, though. At 4, we got Cincinnati, 11-0. Last week, they were ranked 3. Of course, they slide down, though, for a specific team that made a huge jump this week, deservingly. Cincinnati at 4, though, it becomes a real question mark about who's going to get into the college football playoffs. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on in this video. 3, we got the Alabama Crimson Tide. Like I said, a narrow win over the Arkansas Razorbacks. I said that at the top of the show. And Alabama, let's talk about Jamison Williams real quick. That guy is the truth. Absolute wheels, can take the top off of a defense, and is an elite playmaker. Bryce Young as well, I think, deserves a lot of credit. I talked about CJ Stroud a little bit earlier on, which could bring us into number 2 here with Ohio State. I think Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, probably now the top 2 Heisman candidates at this point of the season, which is crazy because they're 2 guys who are not draft eligible this year either. So it kind of shows where college football's at in terms of you got some younger guys really taking the reins, leading their teams. The Buckeyes, led by CJ Stroud, was a great performance again against Michigan State, and they made a huge jump, jumping from 5 up to 2, and one that I think is really well-deserved. Of course, last week, Michigan State was ranked 7th. Alabama beats formerly ranked 21 Arkansas, but narrowly. Ohio State steps all over number 7 ranked Michigan State. Ohio State does deserve to be up above Alabama, and assuming that Ohio State wins the Big Ten Conference Championship, which is what I'm expecting, because Ryan Day just does not lose Big Ten matchups, the Ohio State Buckeyes are going to lock themselves into the college football playoffs at this point. Then we have Georgia here, who I think another team that's guaranteed a spot in the college football playoffs, which leads us to our actual question here now about the video today. Who are the other 2 teams? Because I see Georgia, Ohio State as locks now at this point of the season. I'm looking at Alabama and Cincinnati. There's some, maybe discussion here for Oklahoma State if they won the Big 12 championship. Maybe Baylor if they won the Big 12 championship. However, I'd see it much harder to see Baylor get in than Oklahoma State because they only do have the one loss. Because ultimately, if Cincinnati wins out, it's hard to keep them out, especially with some of the talent that they have on their team. Now, I know their program's not as good. I know their roster's not fully as good as a team maybe like Oklahoma State or Ole Miss, for example, or even Oklahoma. But they beat everyone they've played, and they do have NFL talent. Desmond Ridder, a potential first-round pick. Ahmad Gardner, a lock, in my opinion, to be a first-round selection. Myjai Sanders, probably an early day 2 guy as well. They've got real talent. They got NFL-level players on that Bearcats team. The Bearcats have been producing NFL talent now for the last 5 years. I think it's time that we catch up with how good their roster actually is. Maybe it's not as good as some of these other teams, but with them being undefeated, their resume speaks enough for itself with their record that I think that they should deserve to be in there. And then the question turns to Alabama. If they lose in the SEC Conference Championship game, per se, to the Georgia Bulldogs, they'd be a 2-loss team, and we have not seen a 2-loss team in the college football playoffs yet at this point. So the question would be, does an Oklahoma State, who potentially goes on to win the Big 12 and only has 1 loss, should they be in the college football playoffs over Alabama, who, if they lost to Georgia, would have 2 losses and not win their own conference, which is a big question mark. To me, I would still opt for Alabama, but just narrowly in that case, because I think they have a better team, a better roster, and I think even their losses, you look at the teams that they would have lost to, then they lose to number 14 ranked Texas A&M. I know they were unranked at the time, but they're still the 14th ranked team currently. You have to take that a little bit into consideration. And then you also lose to Georgia in this example, who's the best team in the nation. And I think the team that a lot of people expect to actually win the championship, the college football championship. So I think Alabama still makes some sense to me, but it would be hard to keep Oklahoma State out in that example. Maybe Notre Dame as well. I could see them maybe slip in. There's a lot to unpack there yet. There's a lot that can change here over the next coming weeks. So make sure you guys are subscribed here at Utility Sports. Make sure you leave a like. And also, if you're new, leave a comment. Let us know what team you're a fan of, because we'd like to know who our viewers are and everything that you are thinking about for college football. It's fun having a community here that we can talk about college football, talk about the NFL draft, a lot of different stuff. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.